What's up, guys? It's Undead here again for another YouTube video with zero video editing, as usual. I've been getting questions from a lot of you in the stream about a video guide going over Outlaw rotation. There's a lot of written guides available out there, both on Wowhead, Icy Veins, Ravenholt, but there's no real video guides. They just kind of talk through the rotation that have been made since season 1, maybe season 2. So I'm going to go over things pretty briefly, but just to give you an idea of how to play the spec. And we have a new feature here in this video. We have Notepad. So first, I'm just going to talk about talents for 30 seconds here. I'm assuming when I'm saying this that you're playing Quick Draw, Acrobatic Strikes, Cheat Death, Prey on the Weak, Alacrity. And then there's minor differences. If you play Dancing Steel or Blade Rush, don't play Killing Spree really ever in PvE content. And then there's minor differences on the 45 row if you play Vigor, Deeper Strat, which I'll talk about when we get there. So just keep that in mind. So first, let's talk about what we have. We have builders and we have spenders. Our builders are Sinister Strike and Pistol Shot. That's it. And then our spenders are Roll the Bones, Between the Eyes. This is also our stun, but it's a big portion of our damage. And Dispatch. And that's pretty much, that's all the abilities. The spec's pretty simple from a top-down perspective. There's some complexities in it regarding Roll the Bones, but for the most part, that's it. And then you have Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush, which is our cooldown. 3-minute cooldown reduced by Restless Blades, which every time you spend a combo point, reduces the cooldown of certain abilities by 1 second. Adrenaline Rush is one of those. Between the Eyes is one of those. So it ends up being less than a 3-minute cooldown. And Blade Flurry. So, Rogue is very simple in the sense that you build combo points, you spend combo points. You build combo points, you spend combo points. Repeat, repeat. So let's talk about how we spend our builders correctly. Default, Sinister Strike is your builder. Assuming no other procs or anything, which we'll talk about real quickly here, you spend Sinister Strike. This generates 1 combo point. It also has a 35% chance to give you an opportunity proc, which makes your pistol shot cost half and do twice as much damage. Quick Draw makes it generate an additional combo point when you spend that proc and deal an additional 50% damage. So opportunity procs effectively generate 2 combo points. So we have Sinister Strike as 1 combo point. If a Sinister Strike procs, you effectively Sinister Strike twice, so that's 2 combo points. And opportunity procs generate 2 combo points with Pistol Shot. You never want to use Pistol Shot without an opportunity proc unless you're out of range of the boss, do not have a dead shot proc up, which I'll talk about in a second, and you're going to cap energy. That'll be the only time you want to use Pistol Shot outside of opportunity procs. So the general base is you Sinister Strike and Pistol Shot proc. You Sinister Strike and Pistol Shot to generate combo points, and then you spend combo points. So when do you spend your combo points? Assuming Vigor, you spend combo points at 5 combo points you spend, or at 4 combo points if opportunity proc or broadsides buff is up. We'll talk about broadsides here in a second because I'm getting into Roll the Bones. So your first priority for spenders, your spender priority looks like this. And this is how important it is to use these spenders. It is roll, and by roll, I mean Roll the Bones if no buff at all is up. Next on the list is Between the Eyes. So if you have a buff up, regardless of what buff it is, and Between the Eyes is off cooldown, you hit Between the Eyes. Next is Roll the Bones if bad buff So there are certain buffs you'll keep and certain buffs you won't keep. So if you have a buff, Between the Eyes is on cooldown, and the buff is something that you don't want to keep, which we'll talk about. We'll go into detail on Roll the Bones in a second. Buff is something you don't want to keep, then you just hit Roll the Bones again. And then finally, if you have a good buff and you don't have Between the Eyes up, you hit Dispatch to spend your combo points. So let's talk about Roll the Bones. We have 6 buffs you can get from Roll the Bones. You have Ruthless Precision, which I will refer to as Crit. Grand Melee, which I will refer to as Leech, but it also gives attack speed. So it's attack speed and Leech, but I just refer to it as Leech. Broadsides, which is combo points. True Bearing, which is CDR. Skull and Crossbones. Actually, Buried Treasure we'll do first. Buried Treasure, which is energy, and Skull and Crossbones, which is additional, it's Sinister Strike chance. Additional chance to proc Sinister Strike. So Ruthless Precision is 20% additional crit to all rogue abilities, and 60% additional crit to Between the Eyes in particular. And that's important because Between the Eyes, when it crits, does quadruple damage instead of double damage. Attack speed is 55% attack speed and 20% leech. Combo points makes all your combo point generators generate 1 additional combo point. So that means Sinister Strike generates 2. It means if you get a Sinister Strike proc, you're effectively Sinister Striking twice. So that generates 4. And it makes Opportunity proc spent with Pistol Shot, which typically generate 2, they generate 3 combo points. True Bearing is CDR. It makes it so Restless Blades effect is doubled. So the remaining cooldown on your abilities that are affected by Restless Blades are reduced by 2 seconds per combo point spent, as opposed to 1. Energy is increases your energy regeneration by 4 per second. And Sinister Strike is an additional 30% chance for your Sinister Strike to double hit. And these are listed in order of power. So let's talk about single target. What buffs do you give? You keep single target. Assuming you're running at least 1 dead shot or 1 ace up your sleeves trait, which if you've looked at my previous guide, which is talking about gearing and talents and essences, you should be looking to stack as many of those traits as possible. And if you don't have at least 1 dead shot or at least 1 ace, I wouldn't worry too much about what you're doing rotationally because your character is not powerful right now and you need to get some of those traits before your character really does anything. So single target, you keep Ruthless Precision, so you keep Crit as a solo, or any 2 buffs. So you get buffs in sets of 1, 2, or 5. You can't get 3 buffs, you can't get 4 buffs. Sometimes you'll hear me refer to a 4 buff, and that just means I got a 5 buff minus crit, because it's random which 5 buffs you get. So you can get all 5 of these and no crit, and I'll call that a 4 buff, but it's not actually a 4 buff, it's a 5 buff. So in single target, your buffs to keep are Ruthless Precision, crit, or any 2 buffs. On AoE during Blade Flurry, Skull and Crossbones counts as -1. So pretend Skull and Crossbones is -1 buffs in what I'm saying here, because Skull and Crossbones on AoE does nothing because of how the trait Keep Your Wits About You works. So you keep Skull and Crossbones counts as -1. You keep Crit solo during Blade Flurry. You keep Leech during Blade Flurry, you keep Broadsides during Blade Flurry, and you keep True Bearing, CDR, specifically during Blade Flurry. AoE outside of Blade Flurry, you also keep 2 buffs. Sorry, but remember that Skull and Crossbones counts as -1. So Skull and Crossbones plus energy is not something you keep. Put it that way. Outside of Blade Flurry, This means you're rolling to try to get a powerful buff inside Blade Flurry. You keep crit, leech, broadsides, or 2 buffs. So basically the difference between those are if I'm already inside, if I'm inside a Blade Flurry, and I'm rolling because Roll the Bones is going to fall off, essentially. Or I Blade Flurried on the pull, and I'm rolling as like my first finisher inside Blade Flurry. And I get CDR, I will keep it there. However, when I'm prepping for my next Blade Flurry, I will not keep CDR. CDR is not worth keeping. It's not something you're fishing for to try to keep going into a Blade Flurry, but it is worth keeping inside Blade Flurry. At least I do it. I think a lot of the other top rogues do it. The math's kind of convoluted, so you'll have some boys simming things and being like, no, that's not right, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's very hard to simulate these different situations, especially because no matter what sim you do, it's like if you do like a 1 minute sim or a 30-second sim, you're going in with full cooldowns. And then the fight ends before you really run out of Blade Flurry charges, which is not realistic for like a dungeon setting. It's pretty realistic for a raid setting where you're cleaving. Think like Ashvane, where you have a lot of time outside of Blade Flurry to fish for the buffs that you want inside Blade Flurry. But Ashvane, you probably just follow single target rotation as opposed to looking for specific buffs. And then when bubbles spawn and you want to Blade Flurry, you likely have a good buff up already. So that's it. Really, you keep crit, you keep leech, you keep broadsides on AoE and dungeons. CDR is okay to keep until your Blade Flurry runs out, but then afterwards you want to roll it off. Single target, you keep only crit or any 2 buffs. And there's little intricacies to that when you're in a dungeon, which I'll talk about for a little bit. Like if you're at the end of a pack, there's a mob or 2 left, and you have crit, but you have 10 seconds left on it. It's probably better for you to start rolling for a buff to have in the next pack rather than just keeping that crit for the last maybe 2 finishers that you have inside that pack being alive, because now you've effectively spent less globals at the beginning of the next pack if you find a good buff in those 2 rolls trying to get your buff up, and the next pack at the beginning is likely more impactful. It's probably more mobs, it's more dangerous mobs than say the 2 mobs left over at the end of a pack. So you want to constantly be evaluating how much value you're going to get out of the duration of whatever buffs you have. Also, at the end of like a boss fight, for example, if you know there's maybe 30 seconds, 25 seconds left on a boss, and you have a bad roll, say you have buried treasure and the boss is at 4% and he's going to die in the duration of your roll, I would keep that roll as well. That's not something, there's no sense in rolling off at the end when you're not going to get the max value of the roll. Maybe you don't get the buff that you want, whatever. Important. There is no amount of rolls where you just stop re-rolling. Right? There's no point other than what I've mentioned previously about the boss dying. There's no point in the fight where you just stop rolling. You roll until you get the buffs that you want. It's all like Outlaw is kind of a big math equation and probability problem that needs to be solved. And the likelihood of you getting a roll that you want and the impact that that roll has on your damage outweighs just giving up at a certain point. Also, still roll during Adrenaline Rush. There's no... Adrenaline Rush is not a huge cooldown for us. It's not like a Vendetta where it's just like a flat damage steroid. It's attack speed and energy regeneration. So you just utilize that to get to your good buff faster, basically. and then you get to your next adrenaline rush faster, and now you probably have a good buff for your next adrenaline rush, essentially. Gouge is worth noting. This is not something you really play around. Gouge also generates 1 combo point. So if you're using Gouge for utility in Mythic Plus, you will get a combo point off that. That doesn't mean don't like avoid gouging if you have max combo points. Just waste the combo point if the gouge needs to happen. We'll talk about Deeper Strat real quick. So Deeper Strat follows the same rules as far as when you spend, except you add 1. So with Deeper Strat, you will finish with 6 combo points, or you finish with 5 combo points if broadsides or opportunity proc. And that's to not waste combo points. So even though people ask this question a lot, actually. So say you have Deeper Strat, you're at 5 combo points, or you have Vigor and you have 4 combo points. People ask, do I still Sinister Strike to push to 5, even though there's a chance that I can waste a combo point, like if you get a double Sinister Strike proc? And the answer is yes. The gain from pushing to 5 when you don't get a double proc outweighs the loss of the combo point that you get if you do get a double proc. So you still push to max. Only time you don't push to max and you finish at 1 lower is if you have broadsides or an opportunity proc. Now, if you run Blade Rush, the only thing that changes is Blade Rush is typically the single target choice if you don't have a use for Dancing Steel. Blade Rush happens somewhere during the opener, which I'm going to show you a little trick for your opener here because they change a little bit depending on your trinkets and your essences, but I'll show you a trick how to find proper openers. Blade Rush, anytime you won't cap energy, that's it. You just fit it in. If it's off cooldown and you can fit it in without capping energy, you hit it. If you're gonna cap energy, like you're in Lust and Adrenaline Rush, you don't need to hit Blade Rush. You wait until you're at a point where the energy regeneration has value. The single target damage isn't high enough to warrant anything. And then Ambush, this is a question people ask as well. Ambush is pretty much just CP generation on the pole to get your first roll up. Even in single target, if you have 1 Keep Your Wits About You trait, Sinister Strike averages out to more damage than Ambush. So Ambush is just there at the beginning as like a quick, let me get 2 combo points and then maybe I Vanish for Ambush for 4 combo points in a raid setting. In Keys, I would never Vanish for Ambush because Vanish is way too useful for utility stuff. So here, let me show you this little trick for how your opener works. So I'm assuming you're all familiar with raid bots. If you're not, I would check it out. There's also an add-on in-game called Simulation Craft, and what that does is I have a chat command /simc, and this pulls up my profile. There's all the gear in my bags, all the gear on my character, my talents and essences, and then this gets pasted into raid bots, which I'll pull up here in a second. So raid bots, fastest way to find out what your opener should be, and sometimes this is like slightly inaccurate, but it's a good starter, especially if you're just picking up the class. You go to raidbots.com, you have your SimC profile to copy in, you go to a quick sim, and then we'll do 1 boss, 5 minutes with Lust. It's a typical patchwork fight. And then you run the quick sim after you paste your info up here. And then at the end here, this might be a little bit slower for you. I have premium raid bots because this dude's a fucking genius. I don't know if any of you remember using the old Simulation Craft desktop application, I guess, but this is way better. So then you come down here. This will show you like your damage breakdown, blah, blah, blah. This is your buff, uptime. You come down here, you see where it says show sample ability log. Click this. It opens, and then this is what the sim has done on the opener. This was how they played the opener. And this is how you can find what your opener was. And now see here, if you see Vanish as the first ability, that's because I have on the Cyclonic Blast Trinket, and it means it used the Cyclonic Blast Trinket pre-pull. So pre-pull, I Cyclonic Blasted. It doesn't show here for some reason, but I'll show you another way to find out if that's where they're using it. and then it goes vanish, ambush, concentrated flame, sinister strike, roll the bones, adrenaline rush, blade rush. I must have gotten a proc, that's why it's rolling here. Yeah. Adrenaline rush, blade rush, pistol shot, bang, 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 and then like you can ignore after 10 seconds. But here's how you can tell. So you see how it doesn't show my trinket being used, but if we come down to 2 minutes into the fight, my trinket gets used again, and my trinket has a 2-minute cooldown. So that's like a way you can confirm that it used the Cyclone trinket on pull. Such as a neat little trick. You can do that for any spec as well. If you're curious about opener, you think that there's something about your character, whether it be trinkets you have or an essence that you're playing with, it's maybe atypical or maybe not included in a guide, and you're trying to find out how the fuck do I open with this. That's what you can do. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I missed. Let's look through the spellbook. I don't think we missed much of anything as far as just doing damage goes. The class is relatively simple. Most of the damage you get from Outlaw just comes to practicing with your rolls. So again, single target you keep crit or any 2. During Blade Flurry you keep crit, broadsides, attack speed, true not combo points, CDR, otherwise known as true bearing. Outside of Blade Flurry, in an AoE setting, you drop True Bearing from that list, and you're trying to fish for the good 3. And Skull and Crossbones in AoE counts as -1, which means that you would normally keep 2 buffs, but if you have Skull and Crossbones energy during Blade Flurry, you don't keep that. If you have Skull and Crossbones True Bearing outside of Blade Flurry, you don't keep that. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, like on more in-depth things about the class, specific situations that you may come across in dungeons or raids or whatever, feel free to hit me up in my stream. I'm happy to answer all the questions there. I stream at twitch.tv/undadtv. Or hit me up here. Just ask in the comments. I'll be happy to help out. I'm also gonna link the written guides that I know of in the description below. If you guys want a more written thing, those are not done by me. They're done on Wowhead, Icy Veins, and Ravenholt. If that's easier, if it's better for you to learn through a written guide, I'll link those for you so you can check those out too. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video if you liked it. And subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content. Thanks, boys.